Good evening. It is Thursday, November 2nd, 2023 at 6 o'clock p.m. We are at the District Service Center in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. We would like to acknowledge the land on which we gather is the land of the Minnewacan Dakota people. Minnewacan means dwellers of the Spirit Lake. At this time, our first agenda on the is our roll call, which is 1.0. And Sean, will you call the roll?
Absolutely. Eric Tessmer, Louise Hines,
Here.
Pat Driscoll,
Here.
Melinda Doltz, Katie Schwartz, Simi Petnak, and Sharon Van Leer.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
All right, thank you.
Next is our please rise for 2.0, our Pledge of Allegiance. Our next item is 3.0, and that is the approval of our agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Simi, seconded by Eric. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried. Next on our agenda is, it's not 6.0, 4.1, and it's updates on Gray Cloud and Hillside Elementary. And the induction will be made by our Assistant Superintendent, Tyrone Brooks.
All right, thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce two elementary leaders, Laura Lushik and Aaron Shattuck, and they are going to showcase some amazing things that are taking place at their respective campuses of Gray Cloud Elementary and Hillside. And I turn the mics over to these two leaders.
All right, well, thank you for having us in tonight. Again, my name's Laura Lushik. I have the honor of being the principal at Gray Cloud Elementary School in Cottage Grove, and I'm here with my little cohort here. We do a lot of planning together, and we kind of play off each other, so we thought we're coming together. So Aaron Shattuck and
I didn't know if you were just going to introduce me.
Aaron Shattuck from Hillside, so you can see why we plan for each other. You will also see how we interrupt each other and how we maybe build off each other. So that's kind of why we like to work together.
Yes, so we thought tonight we would highlight our fantastic schools, but along with that, highlight the importance of working together as a team. As you know, we both have very unique schools, but we are one district, and I think we're hoping that tonight shows the importance of us working together and reaching across to different schools, what great things we can have. So with that.
Well, and clearly you approved our strategic plan, so you're very familiar with this document. As school leaders, we really have to think of how do we bring this to our staff and how do we make it workable and how do we make it a living document and bring it into the work that we do. So we kind of started with that, and this summer we had exposure to it. We kind of slice and dice, and what we ended up doing is we came up with our theme, and we built it off the district theme. Not that the district theme isn't great, but we wanted to add our own nuance to it.
So, as you can see, our theme was be routine. That's amazing. Because what we started to think about is when you go into a school, when you go different places, it's kind of that behind the curtain foundation that you create every day through routines, expectations, structures that makes it amazing. It's not always the glitz and glam that makes things amazing. It's really the work behind the scenes. So that's why we added the be routine. That's amazing.
And it's kind of a ploy because the word routine sounds very boring.
Yeah.
But if you think of what it takes to be a good parent, lots of families take their kids on exciting trips. We're going to Disney World, we're doing this. But if you ask people, did that make a big difference in their upbringing? It's probably that my family provided food for me. They read to me. They did these things. I could count on these people. And we want our kids to be able to count on everyone, and we want that experience to be very similar no matter where they go in our schools. So that's kind of our focus, and we'll dig into that a little bit more.
Yes.
And so we're elementary, right? So we have to have a little fun. And sometimes talking about schools, while we love schools, can be not as much, can be maybe a stretch. So we sometimes like to have teachers leave their vantage point and look at things through a different lens. And so if we were thinking about routines, we're thinking about all of these pieces, we ended up doing with our staff this year a restaurant analogy, because we just felt like we have certain things in our life that we go to, and we wanted to kind of bring that to staff so they could think of things in a little different light and nuance. So we'll kind of guide you through that as well.
Yes, so next slide, please. So I want you to think about right now, think about the best restaurant that you go to. I want you to think, like, put yourself there. Why do you go to that restaurant? What are the reasons you go there? Just think through that. On your Post-it note, just jot down. We're just going to do real quick, 30 seconds. Why do you keep going back to that restaurant? What is it that pulls you there every time? Okay, and if you're lucky enough to have like a pink dot on your
Oh, it's a
Post-it
winner.
note,
It's gonna be a
you're a
winner.
winner and you get to share
Yes.
out one item. We're not going, with our staff, we had them share out themes and ideas. We're just going to have those of you with little pink dots.
Oh, winners! Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
You can phone,
Oh,
okay, you
and
can phone
sometimes
a
it's not,
friend.
we also, opened it up too,
Yeah.
thinking about different people. It may not be a restaurant. Maybe it's a favorite meal. We had staff that said, I actually just really like to go to my mom's house and have this meal. Or I like when my husband cooks this. So sometimes the restaurant didn't work, so we adapted that analogy as well. And again, that's one of the things we do with kids too. Like, how are we, when you talk about restaurants, that could be an economic barrier. So again, how do we talked more in meal, but we really talked restaurant overall.
Yeah. So if you have a little pink dot. if
What's
you
your
wanna-
restaurant and why?
What's your restaurant?
Or
and-
meal.
Yes, or meal, and why? I don't know who
So,
has the
Kate, we're
pink.
gonna go this way clockwise.
Yes.
I
so
think
pink-
you do know who has the pink dot.
Oh, did she do it on purpose?
No, I did. I literally went in order. Oh, look at that.
Well, I usually choose places like Little Caesars.
Yeah.
There's routine in that, and but Kelly just quickly whispered to me that that's not considered a restaurant. So I went with my
Julie, it's a
next
meal.
favorite
Call it a meal.
restaurant,
We'll do that.
and that is Culver's. Abby, could you have them stop laughing? You're a small town girl. And here's the reason I like Culver's. It's fresh, it's always hot, and it's always good. There's a consistency to it. And in addition, they have the best custard in a waffle cone. And yes, 2 scoops is what I like. So
Okay.
there's a routine to it.
Great. Thank you. Great. Who else has a pink dot? I really don't know who had the pink dots. Oh! Wow. Way to
There's
throw
no
her
wrong
under.
answer.
There
It's all your
isn't.
preference. We might have laughed at Julie, but that's
Yes.
okay.
Okay, so I put down, because I had trouble with the restaurant part. Mainly because there's no restaurant I would say many restaurants, but I wouldn't necessarily say the reason for these restaurants in public. But my favorite meal is my aunt's crab curry. So she makes it for me every summer when I go visit her, and it's super delicious. And she's made it for me ever since I was like 8 or something. And so she's an excellent cook. I wish I lived closer to her, but I would probably have to buy new pants if I did.
And my guess is there's also the comfort of knowing when you visit her every time that that's coming. So the comfort of being with her, the connection, the feel, that's part of it.
My
friend,
flight
the
was,
counselor.
that is very true. My flight was once canceled, and I said to the man behind the Delta counter, but my aunt is making me crab tonight. I have to get to Philadelphia. She's making me crab. And he was like, I don't care, right? Like, he was like, okay.
If it works, let us know.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else? Did I have one more? Okay.
Abby, very good.
See, I told you, I didn't. Yeah.
service. And I think the best part is if you're celebrating a special event too, they really take care of you and make you or whoever you're with feel special.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Anyone
you for,
else? Was
I
there
forgot
one
to
more?
mention that I like the service too. You just drive through and they hand it out the window. You don't
Two
even
scoops, we
taste.
heard it. Yeah.
Did
You
anyone
can be
else?
in your pajamas if you wanted.
I have a pink dot.
Oh,
there you
okay,
go.
I thought I did.
We didn't count the pink dots. We should have done that. Oh, you did.
I
Okay, there you
knew,
go.
that's
All right.
So the
Yes.
restaurant I chose is Kincaid's St. Paul, and they have rock salt prime rib that is just excellent. And the customer service is definitely on point. It feels good when you can walk into a restaurant and they know you by name. And the amount of money that I'm spending up there, they should know me by name.
That
But
is
the
true.
food is definitely high quality and it's delicious.
So one thing when we talked about restaurants is unless you've ever worked in a restaurant, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes to make Culver's a fantastic place to go. Or your aunt's house, you know that she's in there whipping things up and it smells delicious, you know, or Jetsons or Kincaid's. We don't know all the inner workings, but it comes together to create this wonderful place. And so that's why we used restaurants as a theme, because it's a nice, or not a theme, but kind of that analogy, because it really pulls it together, that that's really what we hope for our school too, that there's all these things going on behind the scenes that make it this fabulous place where our students and families show up every day.
And you can go click along, if you would, Sean, to the next. Yeah. Oh, very good. You're right there. And so one of the things, I did work in restaurants for years. And so it is all about customer service. And I'll tell you while I never own a restaurant, because you can go there, you can be there one time and you don't get good service or it's not expected and you will not go back. And so it can be ruined very quickly. And the behind the scenes pieces that Erin talks about, we like to acknowledge, but people really don't want to know that part. They just want it to happen and they want to feel that. And so we also know whenever things go well, like in a school or you have it go into a classroom and it's a great lesson, we know that that just didn't happen naturally. And so that's kind of some of the things that we're going to talk about. So back to the strategic plan, when we were talking about the student experience, when we're in education, our customer is our students. And we got little people and we have, students are almost ready for middle school. And for us, we want them all to have that everyday experience. And so when we were, after COVID, we're kind of diving into where are we as a school, we had some refinement that we wanted to do and to make sure these things are really happening, because it really just can't be as good as your teacher or as good as your class assignment. We really want to walk that equity piece. And so we talked about what are our all school routines? What does it mean to be a student at Great Cloud? Be a student at Hillside? What does it feel like? What can you expect? What are classroom routines? When you go to specialist, what should that be like? How it should be the same from specialist to specialist. Lunch and recess, end of the day routines, classroom jobs. Especially with our students who may have disabilities, the routines are extremely important for them, and that regularity, and it provides a safety net, and it allows them to come to school and learn. So again, but what's good is good for students is good for all, for certain students is usually good for all students. So we'll kind of keep exploring this piece with the customer experience.
So what we thought we would do is we dive into each one of these areas. So on the next slide, one of our focus areas for student experience was morning meeting. Because all of us in the morning, I don't know about you, but there's been mornings, you're in a battle with my daughter at home to get ready. You're in a battle with the dog who won't, all those things. And so by the time I get to school some days, I always say, I've already run a marathon and now I have to do the next piece. So then we start talking about these little people who come to us every day and we don't know what marathon they've run before walking in. So one of the most important things we can do for student experience is our morning meeting. What are we doing? So ensuring that we're doing greetings, that every child is greeted at the door as they're coming in our building so they feel like this is the place where they're supposed to be. You also need to actively disengage stress. Why is that? Think about how sometimes we walk into work or into a place when we've already run that marathon at home. If we're heightened, we're not ready to do our jobs, neither are our students. And then we need to actively connect to one another so we feel like we belong. We also felt like it's very important to give our staff resources to do those things. Because it's easy to say you need to do all those pieces, but if you don't give them resources, then all of a sudden, oh, it's one more thing that I have to plan and do. So this was an area we focused on, and we just linked this, the first 5. It's a phenomenal, you can get a daily email. It gives great activities that you can do. So it was just one example of what teachers could do every day to help that connection.
And so as we continue through the strategic plan, mastery of learning and expectations, for us it's like what's on the menu. And sometimes some of you will find at your, the places that you'd like to eat, maybe they have an expansive menu. Probably the places that you like, there might be signature dishes. And actually, most of the restaurants that I like to go to for the food don't have as many because they have to specialize and make sure they can do the things that are important well. And so we thought to ourselves, what needs to be on our menu? We talk a lot about the plate. There's too much on the plate. Sometimes there's just too much on the menu. And how do we help our teachers know these are our priorities and kind of what's our bread and butter, for lack of a better word? So we designed this menu. Erin hates my elementary look at times, but as Sean goes on to the next slide, we did a little cutesy thing for them. And so for us on the menu,
Kindergarten
yeah, this is the
teacher.
kindergarten in me coming out. But what's important for us is literacy. That is, in elementary school, that is number one. And so on the menu, it has to be number one. And then we broke it down into the things that support literacy and tried to make that so it doesn't seem like teachers are doing a million things. You're just really focusing on the literacy and here are the things we're going to do. And we also talked about the places we're going to support that, different committees, different staff development that we offer. Then, of course, math. Math is the other one that's huge in elementary, and those are our two really big ones, but it's not that we don't do the other pieces. If you order, you know, if Dr. Brookins is ordering his prime rib, he would also probably like a baked potato, some french fries, a salad, and those are a part of it. So maybe the sides, teaching health, teaching science, really getting into that. And then also when we think of how our entire staff fits in, we think our specialists are kind of the dessert. For some of our kids where the learning is difficult, that's really where they stand out and kind of that time in the day. Sometimes they say this is our fun time. And so we also wanted to articulate, you are a very important part of the menu, and we need you as part of that to make sure that kids are getting that full meal that really is enjoyable.
So again, just to dive into one area that we're very much focusing on is power goals, which is part of our literacy. And power goals is just exactly the way it sounds. Every child has a power goal in literacy that's going to help them increase their skills. So this is a massive focus area for all of us. So when you want to talk about like what's the main dish right now, it is power goals because we need students to know what their goals are, as well as every teacher they come in contact with and know how they're going to specifically instruct that power goal so that students can increase their reading skills, their literacy pieces.
And then continuing on through the strategic plan, when we talk about student pathways and supports, that's where we think of like who is our staff, who are the hostesses, who are the servers, what are the seating areas, who needs to have a corner booth to be more successful, who really needs to be kind of out there with everyone so they can move around and maybe stand. And so as we kind of talk a little bit about that, I believe, Erin, you're going to hit the next area.
The next area is our 10-day conference schedule. And again, literacy. It is where we are focusing all of our efforts. So a 10-day conference schedule is how we are pulling our students in the homeroom classrooms to help support literacy. And if a student needs more support, they're going to be pulled more frequently than students who may be at or above grade level. We're still going to be meeting with all of them, but we're meeting their needs where they are at.
So back to my server days, what we did at where I worked at the restaurant is when people walked in, you had to put down a beverage napkin and bring a water. So there's a touch point and everybody is seen and heard. But then there are certain people that you need to spend more time with and certain people you just need to check in on. And so when we talk about the 10-day conference schedule, we look for those pieces. That's how we try to kind of relate that to staff, because sometimes folks have they want to just have everything be divided equally, but they're not necessarily giving people what they need. And so that was a good analogy for us to work from as well. Oh, it's me again. Super. All right.
Well, you just like to talk.
So the next part of the strategic plan that we talked about is operations and staffing and finance. And, you know, it really, for us, it's all about the people. I heard a couple of you say that having good customer service is really important. Some of the places that I like to go to, they kind of know us. And so they already kind of maybe know what you're going to have before you come there, and there's comfort in that. And so when we talked about that, we have done an extensive amount of hiring this past year. Being the school board, I'm sure you've seen all the names that we've added and approved. And so while that's great to bring fresh people in, we really want to figure out what we can do to keep people, because the retraining, we lose some ground. And so our intentions this year are how do we support new staff and what do we do for returning staff? You know, so some of the things that we talked about that we're doing at our sites is we have new to the building monthly meetings. Not everybody has to go to the same meetings. People who are new need to go to that meeting. For our paraprofessionals, this is a group that really does outstanding work for us, hard work, and it's very hard to get these people. And so how do they feel successful? We have created para partners so that we have an existing paraprofessional who's with a new paraprofessional, a natural buddy, and we're having meetings and times where we're building that culture between the two of them so that, again, it helps the whole. Paraprofessional staff development, the district is offering some on the 7th, but we've been doing our own in the building too because, again, we don't want to keep having to bring in new people. We want our families to know, oh, I know these people. This feels trusting. And for us, a lot of us are doing some work with conscious discipline, really thinking about how our own regulation impacts the kids. And so our entire staffs are doing some training on handling upset, which is a video series. So again, that's how it all fits into supporting our people.
And then finally, the last pillar, I'm sure you're like, let's get a move on. The last pillar is our community and our culture. And so for us, those celebrations, those themes, doing things to really build our Hillside community, Gray Cloud community. We have monthly activities. I know Gray Cloud does as well. One thing I highlighted in the next slide, we had our first annual Hillside Community Night. I thought I would, be a celebrity, and I got to go up on Cottage Grove's new fire truck up in the bucket. They got it in 2021, side note. I learned all about how to operate it, even though I'm not allowed to. But it was such a huge success. It was a different way to bring all of our families and our staff and our community together, where it was just fun, lighthearted, celebrating the first week of school. Like, this is the place we want to be, and this is where I want to come back to. And you also had, within the first month of school,
that was your lead-in today. I'm like, I did what?
Yeah,
we had
you
some
did what?
celebrations too.
Yes.
And so what we're trying to do is sometimes when we have changed maybe the way we've addressed even holidays with our families, they feel like maybe we aren't able to have fun, but we want to have fun in a strategic way where everyone can be part of it. And so that's been our intentionality. And so a lot of times when we have school-wide themes or celebrations, we're trying to tie them almost up until there's a break so that there's a natural time like, hey, this isn't maybe the most rigorous day. Let's bring in something that we can enjoy. So we had a Magic Norm, our PTA supported. We have a Blizzard Bash coming up. We have different things that we're planning. Let's bring in Climb Theater right before spring break. Let's do some of these things that are also allow us to be a community, which is, again, what kids feel good about being there. So when we think about like the restaurants, the meals, do we want to be regulars there? Do we want to be someone to come back? And do our students and families? And the answer for us absolutely has to be yes. They have to want to.
Yes. We talked about this, we joked about cheers. You want everyone to feel like everyone knows your name when you walk in your school. And that's what we hope that we do when we create things like it's routine, It's not flashy, it's nothing like that, but being routine is amazing. Like we said, it's not a show, it's not perfection. It's really what we do every day. So, and as you can see, Laura and I work together a lot. So, yes, so there you go. That was our focus. Questions?
Go ahead, Louise.
Not a question, a couple comments, though. I've had the opportunity to sub in your school because I have friends there, and those routines are incredibly wonderful for someone who comes in, and the children know the routines. I will be honest, my classroom management plan when I'm at Gray Cloud that's not Gray Cloud behavior. And the children all know what that is. Talking about when you mentioned morning meeting as well, talking with children about morning meeting and their responses, well, how else would my brain be ready to learn? I like that it's not just routine, that everything that goes behind that routine is very transparent, very obvious to the children as well. So just thumbs up to both of you.
I just have one, man. So one of the questions I had was around, you were talking about power goals for literacy. So how are those set? Like, do the kids have a voice in what their power goals are?
I can take it. So ARC is obviously our literacy resource, and there's the ERLA, which is what we do with all of the students. So while we're reading with our students, going through the word checklist, it could be letters, it could be blends, that actually focuses in on kind of a power goal range. So it kind of lays out what the different power goals could be, and then you want to choose a high leverage power goal. What's gonna make the most movement with a student? So obviously, like, let's just talk about kindergartners. When you're onboarding reading, a high leverage power goal for many kindergartners are letter names, letter sounds, and being able to, as they read, point to words so that they're understanding there's actually words on the page. It sounds really like, oh, well, of course. But those are the little things that start onboarding you to become a reader. So that's how they're chosen. The students are a part of it in the sense that they're reading with us, but there is kind of a range of goals to kind of leverage that.
Okay. Any other questions? Right after this, you will be cloned. Thank you, Lauren and Aaron. You are excellent role models, and you do outstanding work, and we're very proud of you. Thank you. Oh, y'all don't have to leave. Y'all can stay. Next is 4.2, and that is bond information update, and that will be presented this evening by our superintendent, Julie Nielsen.
Thank you. I'm going to work to bring that same level of enthusiasm to this presentation. I'm going to have to get my hands going, get exciting. And I would just say in the news anchor spirit that this is a routine as well for me. And we are getting to the end as we think about vote, securing our future, and supporting our students. This is our final presentation to the board before we go to our election next Tuesday, November 7th. While it has come quickly, we also know that a lot of work has gone in behind the scenes. And so I think for board members to look around this table, to know executive cabinet members, Dan is not here this evening, but everyone around the table has put in a lot of extra time working to communicate with our school leaders, with community groups, et cetera. And so as we look at the final week, Vote 2023, we are kind of in that closeout realm of encouraging staff and families to get out to the polls and vote. First of all, we hope, and if you watched the KARE 11 interview last night, we hope that everyone within our community has received multiple communications about the engagement with the community sessions, with what's happening in the school district. But we also know that there are going to be people who may say they didn't hear. And so we continue to, as we round out, to work on that engagement. For families, sharing the bond, the levy, and the election information with neighbors and friends in the community. Last night, we held our final community information session. I'll talk more about that at the end. All residents should have received our Vote 2023 mailer and our print, our Connect. And honestly, as we have gone out and done sessions, we have had great feedback around our district newsletter. People really like the variety, and of course, this one featured our election in the center. And then finally, with 3 open board seats, the get to know board candidates, and making sure that individuals go onto our website and take a look at the video that is posted from the League of Women Voters, along with our cable commission also did some different videos, and so that information is out there as well. Our focus this evening is just to round out taking a look at that capital projects levy. And again, the capital projects levy, this is the ballot question, and we always talk about by voting yes, you are voting for a property tax increase. What is that technology projects levy? It provides a dedicated funding source. And that really is the difference. When we take a look at the graph, this allows for dedicated funding so that it's predictable, so that our director, Bob Berkowitz, as he works through technology and the cybersecurity and everything else, you really could not imagine in any one day everything that touches technology. And so I think the board knows that we're going from 2.8 million. Our ask is going to be 5 million. I think Katie brought forward a question around inflation. And the technology projects levy is not based on inflation. It doesn't increase on inflation. It increases on the additional houses and the marketable houses that come in. And so that's why we see the increase. In the bottom portion of this slide, it just lays out the difference between our infrastructure and security along with the teaching and learning components. And as we have talked, one of the things our community shared is just the importance of safety and security. And so on that left-hand side, you can see all of those areas that technology touches in terms of safety and security. And this is a slide that we have updated over time. You see Stillwater in there, levying $571 per pupil dedicated to funding. Currently, SoWash is at $137 per pupil. With the additional dollars, I believe Dan has shared that that would bring us up to about $240, somewhere between $240 and $250. So you can see that we would still be well below what other districts have levied. At the top, just to note that the state average of districts that do utilize the technology projects levy funding is $493 per pupil. And again, this is a little bit of a repeat, but again, it impacts all areas of our operations. And the bottom line is important that the state of Minnesota does not provide school districts with categorical funding for technology. It all would come out of the general fund. And then we just take a look at frequently asked questions. Don't you already have a technology projects levy? And the answer is yes. We currently have a levy. So part of this is revoking and renewing. And in there, we also have clearly defined the difference between operating levies and capital projects levies. And you'll see that the third bullet point, we talk about the levy that we approved in 2021. We did not approve the levy in 2021. But the capital projects levy, we did approve the levy, but the capital projects portion failed in 2021 by less than 100 votes. And so the request for question 3 is to revoke and renew it. And again, that was passed in 2017. So that particular levy would stay in place until 2027. And then finally, what if the capital projects levy or technology levy fails? We would continue, obviously we're always going to be looking at our dollars when they're coming out of general fund, but the existing levy would remain in place, and then any additional cost for technology would come out of our general fund. And then finally, this is a page, I know board members, some of you have said that you could give these presentations, and I'm happy about that. Our website, our communications team has just done an outstanding job. Their latest mailer will be, for our elementaries, will be not only for the elementary impact, but the middle schools they may go to and the high schools. So every one of our elementary schools will get a personalized mailer. I believe that's going out. They got it today, and it's going out to youngest and only. So we wanted to be thoughtful that, you know, if you have a family of 3 or 4, that you're not getting 3 and 4 copies, that at the elementary schools, it went to the youngest and onlys. And multiple times, I need board members to know that should question 2 not be successful and we need to change those elementary attendance boundaries, we have communicated extensively around the need for elementary attendance boundaries. So we could go back and pull the individual flyers of where that communication went out. So we hope that those schools that are impacted by those elementary attendance boundary changes really have paid attention. And then with that, Sharon's interrupting already for a question. With that, are there any final questions that board members are hearing or that we may need to clarify?
Yeah, Julie, I just had a question on page 5, that graph. Just those school districts that are listed, are those comparable in size to 833?
Comparable in size, Minneapolis, yes. Osseo, yes. And Rosemont, Apple Valley, yes. Yep. Stillwater is only half our size. So Stillwater is about 9, I believe the last count was around 9,000, 10,000 students. Dan usually references them as about half our size. And Wayzata is significantly smaller. Rosemont is the 2nd or 3rd largest district. Yep. Thank you, that's a good question.
Anyone else? Katie.
I know that you will miss these updates. And I would just like to finally just remind anybody who is watching the importance of making sure you've taken time on the website, you've read the information, that people are informed and they get to the polls and they vote. Really, as a school district, that's all we can say. We can neither promote or say no to our questions. Our job is an informational campaign, and we do hope that our community felt like we really listened and that we took the feedback we received after being unsuccessful in August of 2022 and made the adjustments. And as I shared yesterday in the interview, we really do consider this to be our community's plan.
Thank you, Julie. And that is good information, and I think we assimilated it appropriately. All right, moving along, right along. 5.0 is our information items, and 5.1 is information on the READ Act, and that will be presented this evening by our Assistant Superintendent, Kelly Jensen.
All right, thank you. So as it stated, the READ Act is one of the legislations that was passed this last session. And you would think that READ Act is what it's called because read, literacy, makes sense, but it actually is an acronym for Reading to Ensure Academic Development. And that was passed and signed May 24th, 2023. It replaces the Read Well by third grade legislation that you may remember from the World's Best Workforce report. So that was one of the reports that's embedded within the World's Best Workforce. It's now going to be called the READ Act. So the goal that they have set forth is that every child is reading at or above grade level every year, beginning in kindergarten, and to support our multilingual learners and students receiving special education services and achieving their individualized reading goals. So this is no longer by third grade. This is every child, every grade. So there's 4 pieces that we're going to focus on tonight that the district is working toward or has accomplished. That you're gonna hear more about as we get into next year's planning and curriculum and all the conversations that are coming up. So the first one is the identification process and universal screening. Thanks. As far as that, so screening is to screen every student using a tool that is approved by the Department of Ed within the first and last 6 weeks of the school year for those in grades K through 3. So Minnesota Department of Ed has selected 2 screeners for K through 3 that we will need to vet and go through a process and determine which one we are going to implement next year for our K through 3 students. They are working on developing or identifying the screener for our grades 4 through 12 because if there are students that are not meeting their goals in foundational literacy skills in grades 4 through 12, we have to know that and we have to screen them for that. So students who demonstrate characteristics of dyslexia and they're identified as not reading at grade level. They haven't really told us what identified, not reading at grade level means. Could be on the screener from last year, so we're still kind of waiting on that 4 through 12 guidance, but we do have the K through 3 guidance and we are vetting those screeners right now. The next piece was curriculum and intervention. The district literacy curriculum intervention and supplementary materials must be evidence-based. The Department of Ed is reviewing curriculum right now, and they are set to put forth a list in January of approved curriculums. As a district that just adopted a new elementary curriculum, obviously this brings up some angst that we've adopted a curriculum recently. But we really believe what we've adopted is strong, it's evidence-based, so we're hopeful that we will have a process to have American Reading Company reviewed by MDE. It's in the process right now. And then the other piece is MTSS, you've heard us talk about that, and just ensuring that the intervention methods that encourage family engagement where possible, making sure that we are wrapping our hands around these kiddos to get them to their reading goals. The other piece about the intervention is that, can you go back one more? The other piece about the intervention is that by 25-26, any teacher who is teaching an intervention class must have gone through the literacy training. And so to get to the next piece of this is a huge piece is training for our staff. And the district must provide training on evidence-based reading instruction to teachers and instructional staff. MDE has released the list of K-3 approved professional development programs. There are 3 of them. They range in hours from 50 to 155. And so we're taking a look at those right now and determining how we're going to be able to fit those into the work schedule. Because if you go to the next slide, you can see by 2025, so not next summer, but the following, the list of teachers that need to be trained in structured literacy, and then by 2027. So really, it's every early childhood through grade 5 teacher, every special education teacher, every teacher who teaches EL, any teacher who teaches reading, and any teacher who teaches intervention. So it's quite a large list, and so we are really wrapping our arms around this as a district and adopting literacy as our goal next year. We will be diving in, and all of our teachers are going to become reading teachers. And so we are excited about this and the opportunity to dive into it. So, but right now, as I mentioned, they've only released the K-3 programs. We're hoping that the 4+ programs come out soon. This one's fast. The last one is that we must employ a district literacy lead or contract with one. And fortunately, as you probably have guessed, one of Julie's passion is literacy. And so this is a position that we already have in our district. She is a supervisor in our teaching and learning department. She has been front and center with all of this work for a long time. So we are super fortunate to have her on staff. And we have 2 teachers on special assignment that specialize in literacy support for teachers as well, one at elementary and one at secondary. So as far as next steps with the READ Act, I'm sure you'll hear from me again that we are hoping to have a decision on a screener and some professional development by December or January. We know that the approved curriculum list will be revealed in January as well, so we'll have some work to do there, preparing the professional development and the screening process, all of that we'll be implementing next year. The other piece that's going to be coming out is the local literacy plan template will be changing, and that's kind of a behind-the-scenes work that Leah and Tom and Eileen do. But the first submission with all of the new screening data and everything will be June 15th of 2024. The last slide just has the MDE website that is ever-changing. I just downloaded the most recent FAQ, and it was done October 20th. So they are continuing to field questions and update things. I know the superintendent groups have talked about this quite a bit, and so we are staying on top of it. We have a great group, a steering committee, a leadership committee that we're working through the READ Act implications.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Question?
So
I have one question. Are we training our own people to be trainers, some of them?
So right now, that's not an option. It's not a train-the-trainer model. One of the programs is letters. That's the 155-hour one, and we have many staff who have gone through letters. So there'll be a process for teachers who have already done the training, but we are looking at providing some opportunity for teachers to be literacy leaders. So they'll go through training before people, and they will be kind of the leader of their learning cohort as the literacy training goes.
Simi?
So can you slide back? So we have to have, by July 1st, 2025, we have to have K-12 special ed and reading intervention teachers trained, but we do not have the stuff for grades 4 through 12, correct?
We don't have the approved programs for 4 through 12 yet.
Okay.
They say they're coming out very soon, so we anticipate they will be similar to the K-3 with some extended.
Okay, and so does this pose like a timeline concern at all?
No.
Okay. And then my other question was around, you mentioned that ARC is not, well, the state has not approved any literacy curriculum, correct?
Not yet.
Okay.
Correct.
And so if ARC does get approved by the state, is there any adaptation we have to do?
You know, I think Carrie, through the University of Minnesota, is the organization that's helping with the review. And what Carrie will say is that there is no perfect curriculum. There's no curriculum that hits every single box that they're reviewing. We know that what matters is the teacher, which is why it's exciting that the training is part of this too. So I anticipate that there will be supplements that may come If ARC is on the list, there may be something we have to do, but, that's yet to be seen.
Do you know offhand, and you may not know this because I didn't send this in ahead of time, but are there other states that have like approved curriculum? And in those states, is ARC typically one of those approved curricula?
I don't know if ARC is. Colorado has a very detailed READ Act as well. And Arkansas, I believe, also has a very detailed READ Act. I don't recall if ARC submitted to Colorado.
I don't know that they did.
Yeah. Curriculum's kind of regional. There's companies that they only write for California or they only write for Texas. Like they know where they're going to sell their curriculum. ARC is one that's really based on teaching practices. Like it's really it's different. It's not a book you pick up and just go from one page to the next. And so I think it takes a lot of time to implement ARC. And so it's not an easy curriculum to pick up and do, which is, a tribute to our teachers who have picked it up and are doing a great job with it. So I think they would submit if districts had invested in them, if that makes sense.
I think one thing I want the board to realize as Kelly shared this presentation is you heard the need for 50 minimum to 155 hours of professional development. And then one takes a look at our calendar and thinks, where are we ever going to find that amount of time? In addition, when you look at the different groups and when they have to be trained by, it's how do we organize around all of this and which group is going and who's going to keep track of who's going when. And so in 2 weeks, our 24-25 calendar will come forward. And so you're going to see some of the implications of the READ Act on our district calendar. It's not quite as smooth and as even as years past, but what we decided as an executive team is that our hope is that we could take one calendar year and have everyone trained. Instead of disrupting 2 and 3 years, if we could get all the training done in the first year so that we can keep our students on similar schedules, now our teachers and staff can utilize that training. Instead of waiting for year 3 to do the training, if we can make it work the first year with professional development days, we feel like it's a benefit to our teachers, but it's a greater benefit to our students. So just know that part of Kelly sharing the READ Act and what it's about is that you're going to see some of the implications begin to be reflected in our calendar.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Excuse me. So if ARC does not pass after it's been reviewed, do we have a plan B, or would MN just assign us a different curriculum, or how would we go about that?
Yeah, we've been working on that actually recently, that number one, districts can then submit. So if they aren't on this list, then we as a district can submit documentation to say we believe it meets the rubric that you use to evaluate curriculum. There's some other nuances in the legislative language about funding sources for curriculum and things like that. So we're working on that right now, but there's definitely a plan B and a plan C and probably a D, because I think the legislature did this. It's got great intent, and the Department of Ed's really scrambling to try to get everything out there, and so like the ball's moving and decisions are moving and turning, and so we'll see what happens.
At the bones of it, isn't the curriculum the standards that MDE has set? So ARC is a resource, and we may need additional resources. Would that be a fair way to characterize?
Always, yes, absolutely. And even for secondary, resources for secondary right now we're reviewing the standards with the groups right now, so we know we'll be adopting some secondary resources too.
One additional question, Kelly. You mentioned that reading at grade level hasn't really been defined yet?
For 4 through 12.
For 4
like
through 12.
What is going to be used to determine if a kiddo is reading at, is it MCAs, is it some other measure? So we would know who we need to screen.
So is it defined right, or currently, or has been defined by the MCAs, or is it a mixture of things?
MCAs are a snapshot in time, but it's the accountability test we have to say you've met the grade level curriculum-based standards. We do other assessments like MAP, which are more adaptive to a kiddo. Like when he answers a question, then the next question comes at whatever level. So yes, I think that's, that's fair to say. I think that if a kid's having a bad day on the MCA day, it's not a fair picture of what that kid is. So I think that's kind of what we're wondering is, when a student reaches 4th grade, what measures are we going to use to determine if we need to screen that student as we go? Is it based on the curriculum, assessments that come with these approved curriculums? Is it MCAs? Is it some other measure that, these are my 5 kids that are not reading at grade level, so I need to make sure I'm screening them and giving them individualized instruction type of thing?
But is it the Minnesota Department of Education that's going to determine what that criteria is?
Yes.
So they haven't defined that yet, even though they've passed this legislation that's based on grade level reading.
So they've defined what grade level is because the standards are out. So the standards define what needs, what skills happen at a grade level. I think what's up for question is what is the measure to say, like what's the common measure we're all going to use to say that this student's not meeting grade level standards?
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
One more. So Kelly, it's just K through 3 that is universal, and then 4 through 12 will be based on whatever the MD says it is.
The not reading at grade level or showing signs of dyslexia.
Okay.
Were the 2 things.
And so what happens if a student is, are there tests that every student in 4th, because I know that MCAs aren't provided every year to every kid, right? Like there's some, like at the high school level, some kids take MCAs and you take there's a 9th grade something and then a different subject in 10th grade and then
Yeah, I believe reading is in 10th grade reading.
So what happens for kids who are not in kind of that testing window?
So grades 3 through 10 are MCA tests. So every grade up through 3 through 8. Okay. Or 3 through 8 would be taking the MCA. Yep, there's some. We also do MAP testing right now. So, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with as a common measure. As I mentioned, that might be part of their curriculum review process too. Like there might be things embedded within the curriculum that teachers are doing assessments to say, this one, this student's not reading at grade level, so.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Kelly. Next is 5.2, and that is the first reading of proposed policy changes, and that will be presented by our Superintendent, Julie Nielsen.
Thank you. This evening, I am bringing the following policies that have been reviewed and revised to reflect updates in Minnesota statute, definition of terms, legal references, and cross-references. The Board Policy Committee has reviewed those policies with those directors responsible for the policies. So this evening, the 6 policies, Policy 710, extracurricular transportation. You'll note in that particular policy there are changes to the legal references and cross-references. 711, video recording on school buses, changes to grammar and cross-references. And just so the board is aware that we do on all of our school buses have the ability, video ability. And so in there it talks about, there was a point in time where we moved cameras, there was a box. That policy language has not changed in the event we have a contractor that still may be using an older bus. So, but just to clarify for purposes of our school buses. 802, the disposition or disposing of obsolete equipment and material. There were no suggested changes there. 805, waste reduction and recycling, no suggested changes there. And both 805.1 and 903.2, we are asking to remove those policies and just create procedures. There are no legal references. It is not an MSBA policy. So 805.1 addresses district landscaping. I don't think the board wants to have a policy. I think that a procedure definitely makes more sense. And then 903.2, relations with other school districts and educational research centers, is the second that we are asking to remove. So with that, I would take any questions.
We had a sign up for the public comment on policies only. Sean, has anyone signed up?
No.
Has the board any questions? Next is 6.0, and that is the reports and comments. We will start with our superintendent, Julie Nielsen.
Fabulous. I'm going to start out talking just a little bit about last night. We had our final meeting. If you recall, the advertisement was right on the back of this. November 1st come, and we had 2 individuals come. So one of 2 things. Everybody is tired of hearing about it, or perhaps they didn't read this, but we're hoping for the first. And the 2 individuals that came were lovely. We did the full presentation. So we hope that that's a good sign that no one in the community has questions. But we rounded out that last evening, and now we just continue to make any personal contacts as we go out to the schools, reminding people to vote. And ask, of course, if they have any questions. I know today I was on a phone call actually following up on a situation with a community member, and then as we got to the close of the conversation, I was able to say, are you aware of our district bond coming up? And of course, the individual said yes. And so I think having those conversations really is much more engaging than sometimes just a piece of literature. It's always great to read the information, but I think, again, as Laura and Aaron talked about, that personal touch. And then my final report is around our boys soccer teams from Woodbury High School and Park High School. What an incredible day on Wednesday. I know that Katie and Melinda and Simi had the opportunity to be there. First of all, to watch Woodbury play the 8 o'clock game, and as we're stuck in traffic, the principal is like, oh my gosh, we should have left earlier. We should have left. How early can we leave? My goodness, it was dark. The birds were still chirping. Anyway, Woodbury played at 8 o'clock. Park High School played at 10 o'clock. Both games ended like this. There was a score, and our kids just fell to the ground. I didn't realize that that is the way soccer ended, but such incredible grit and determination and teamwork, sportsmanship. As leaders, we stood in front of the students, and we received an education in and of itself. Not only an education, but we were humored the entire time. Our kids were so respectful and such good sports. The way they cheered, Park prayed. They said, Park deserves to go to the championship. As another boy said, I want to miss math on Friday. And so we had the whole, there were so many kids, and I think what was awesome, we talk about equity and we talk about access, and by providing fan buses for our kids, and we provided 8 to 9 fan buses for each of our schools, we had students who may never have gotten to see US Bank Stadium, and they were able to make that trip with their team. And so to be there was incredible. Today, of course, the way it ended is Park played Woodbury, and as a parent said to me as I left, even though Woodbury won, a parent said, hey, your team won today. I said, yes, they did. And as a community, we should be so proud. One of the parents owns a business here in South Washington County Schools, and she almost had tears as she spoke to me how proud she was to have her business here in South Washington County with the students that were representing us on the field and in the stands. And so I think that's a tribute to everybody around the table, and just how proud, and to our students and our athletes, just incredible work. Soccer is so demanding. Up, down, jump around, front, back, head, legs, body. It was so incredible. And really, and thank you to the coaches, to our athletic and activity directors, things like that, as Laura talked about that routine, it just doesn't happen. There's a whole lot of organization that goes into getting kids on the right buses, making sure they have their tickets when they look at you like, do you have your ticket? My ticket? Yes, you need a ticket. But all of the details, it was very wonderfully done. So congratulations to both the Woodbury High School and Park High School soccer teams and everyone associated with them. They represented South Washington County Schools very proudly.
That is encouraging. Thank you. Next, we will take school board members' reports, and we'll start with Melinda Doles.
And then at 9:16 last night, they talked about they had their first cultural community building event of the year, and they just started those last year in the spring. About 30% of their BIPOC staff attended. And the event's really, it's an opportunity for the 916 BIPOC members to network and build social connections, and they're really hoping that it can assist with staff satisfaction and retention levels. And then also, as part of 916 strategic action, program leaders are sharing how their work is making a difference for students, staff, and families. So we're having different showcases, and last night we had the director of the auditory oral program come in. And has anyone heard of this program before, the auditory oral program? It's so neat. It's for students age 18 months to age 5 with hearing loss. And they all have such different types of hearing aids. Some are implants, some are the ears, just all different hearing aids. And all the staff are trained in that, and the classes are done, and for them to be able to adapt to each child's level. And so it's just a really neat program, and their goal is to get the child back to their homeschool program by that time. And then also, just wanted to, in case we're not aware, that they have a Explore Assistive Technology Library, where any of their adapted equipment homeschool districts can borrow for up to 6 months to see, or up to 6 weeks, excuse me, to see if it's something that they're interested in using at no cost. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Melinda. Next is Pat Driscoll. Okay, Louise Hines.
The Staff Development Committee met, so perfect timing for that. Really, so much representation on that committee from all the different schools and different specialties and special ed, and taking a look, first part of the meeting, taking a look back at August and getting feedback on the professional development that was offered at that time, and then taking a look at November 7th, next Tuesday. So looking what did we learn and what can we put into practice here, and then looking forward to staff development on January 29th.
Thank you, Louise. Next, we have Simi Petnick.
So Julie talked about policy. CFAC met earlier this month, and we got an update on the audit. It's coming in January. I'm very excited. And also long-range facilities plan update and just kind of what the budget for that looks like. The DEI Parent Advisory Committee met, and one last bond presentation, recap of Hispanic Heritage Night, which was in early October 6th, great fun, and then looking ahead to Hmong Family Night, which will be in December. And then lastly, I volunteered earlier this week with the SoWashCo pop-up, SoWashCo Cares pop-up at Basic Needs, and so I just want to put a plug out there. They need winter clothes for their families, especially kids, boots, and snow pants. So if anybody is out there, please provide winter, and you have the ability to provide winter boots and or snow pants for SoWashCo Cares. We've got a lot of cold children, especially when it snowed right before Halloween. And so we just want to make sure all of our kids are warm this winter. Oh, and they have to be new.
Same.
You guys are magnificent. Just a reminder, evaluations are due tomorrow. They are online. It closes tomorrow, and we will have a closed session next meeting. No report. All right, let's move to 7.0. I just love this group here. Our future meeting dates, we have a school board business meeting on November 16th and December 14th, 2023. Both meetings will be held at the District Service Center at 6 p.m. Next is 8.0, and that is adjourned.